Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Creatives of Windsor Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Sheardown, and today I'm sitting down with local talk show host, Meg Roberts.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
This is very exciting for me.
Yeah.
Normally, I feel like I'm on your end, not this end. So it makes me nervous.
Does it, is it like, do you like being asked questions or do you like to be the one asking the questions?
You know, a little bit of both. I got into the industry. I got into broadcast about 10 years ago solely to ask the questions and not for the kind of tables to be turned on me. But, you know, with this job, the talk show gig, yeah, I feel like a little bit more my personality is allowed to be shown. And so sometimes Mike and I are on the receiving end of the questions. So getting used to it, I guess, a little bit more.
Yeah, you don't have to be like as, I guess, biased or conflicts of interest because like it's more lighthearted.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's actually been probably the hardest part about changing from hardcore news, because that's what I was doing, to something a little bit lighter, like a talk show host, is getting used to expressing a bit of an opinion out loud and also doing that, knowing that there are two sides to every story and we've got so many different kinds of listeners. So trying to be, in a way, not appease everybody because you never will, but understanding that there's a bunch of sides to a different story, where with news, I mean, it was just here are the facts every night. So big change. The hardest part for sure. Yeah.
I always like try to like, even with doing this, like at first I used to be so nervous. I was like, and then I don't know, you feel like you get a little bit more easygoing about it and you're more comfortable with just kind of like just talking and like speaking your mind.
Yeah.
And it's not as like stressful anymore, I
and
guess.
I think I started at AM 800 October 15th, which is actually my 30th birthday. So I haven't been doing it for, a long time.
Like this past October, right?
October. So yeah, only a few months. And every day it does get easier hearing your own thoughts out loud, hearing your own stories, sharing stories of my family and my friends now on air for the masses. I'm getting used to that. How much do I share? How much do I hold back? Yeah. That's been challenging. It's just navigating also who I want to be on air. Like Mike said that when I started, like, you're going to have to be yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to be good at this. You won't be successful if you aren't yourself. But also, coming with a bit of a personality. Who do you want to be? What role do you want to have on this show? How do you want to interact with me? What kind of relationship are we going to have together? So Mike and I are still kind of working that out. Mike, my co-host, obviously. But it is getting easier day to day. But it's gonna take a while.
That sounds like that's so much to like think about when you're first starting and you're like so nervous because you're like trying to be something. And
definitely. And you know why? When I was doing news, people didn't like you for you. I say that because they liked you, how you delivered the news. They liked your reporting. Perhaps they liked the cadence of your voice, those kind of things. But now on this show, you were asking people to like you for you. And that has been humbling, perhaps, and challenging. But yeah, I'm showing so much personality now. And it's like, oh, if you don't like me, well, you don't like me. I don't know what to do about that. And I don't think I might not ever be able to convince you to like me, but I don't know. I can do my best and just be me.
Yeah, that's all you can do, right? Just try your best.
Yeah, I am glad that news gave me it gave me thick skin doing the news, And I started when I was 20, so I didn't start like that. Obviously, you can imagine. I didn't even finish university prior to getting my first job at CBC. And, and the comments roll in, being a young woman in broadcast, you're going to get the hate mail, you're going to get the comments. And at first that was really hard. But years of that kind of wore me down. So going into a job like this where people can be critical on you, I kind of already had a bit of a background on, as long as my family and friends love me then and like me, well, that's good enough. That's good enough, yeah.
So do you like try to not read like comments on your guys' stuff or?
Sometimes. It depends on what it is. And I've gone through phases in my career where it was easier to read some of that stuff than other times. And what I mean by that is for me, the stuff on your appearance, and both men and women get it, but I think women sometimes are subjected to some different criticism there.
For sure.
That stuff rolls off my back so easy. But I will say there are comments when I was doing, I have covered 3 Olympics now. And there was this past Olympics in Beijing, I was covering the women's national hockey team. And some of the comments online towards women in sport and women broadcasters, those got really negative at times. And those were the types of comments that really impacted me or affected me because I couldn't understand why, people have such negative, attitudes towards women playing sports and women being involved in sports. So that's the kind of criticism that kind of gets me down more than anything personal.
Do you think that because of the Olympic coverage was on a bigger scale, that like the people weren't local, that they were like more harsh or meaner than they would be to you on AM 800 where the viewers are local?
It's not 100%. I feel like it's not like as much of a community, right? Because you've got the whole nation watching this coverage. And plus we were streaming live on YouTube. And so we actually had an international audience. So yeah, there was not a whole lot of loyalty, if that makes sense, where the listeners at AM 800, oh my gosh, are they loyal? And that's been a community for a very, very long time. And I'm just a very small piece in that, really. So I feel like, the criticism is definitely different. And things are kinder, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I've seen like a lot of like other podcasts, like, there's always negative comments on like anything you put out. But with this podcast, because it's like only local,
hyper local. Yes.
And it's like just artists talking. It's like not controversial. Like we just have fun. Like it's been 2 years and there's never been one negative comment.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess it's because, like it's just like everybody's family and friends watching them probably.
Definitely. And you know what? We have all walks of life that tune in, which is amazing. And I really try and keep that into perspective as well, but also with all different walks of life watching and listening and commenting, you've got some really unbelievably kind people, obviously, and you have some people that are not as kind, or they're looking for something other than just rocking with us in the mornings.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that you could get 1,000 nice comments, but the one bad one is like the one that you like dwell on, I guess. Yeah,
definitely, and that's the way it goes. There's always so many more nice comments, obviously, than there are the negative ones. And you know what? Like I said, I've got thick skin now, and I do feel like everybody's entitled to their opinion, and taking criticism is something that I try and do well, because you're only going to get better in a lot of ways like that. But I definitely think there's a line between criticism and I don't know, just being plain mean.
Yeah. Where okay, so you started about 10 years ago.
Yes.
Because you said you just turned 30.
Yes.
In October.
Yes.
So where did you go to school?
So I went to school here at the University of Windsor, okay. And I had looked around for a little bit to some other schools. I was playing high-level soccer in high school, and there was a number of girls on this team that I was playing on that were going on scholarship to the States to play soccer, and so I was kind of looking at some schools, and then a bunch of us kind of decided, let's just stay at the University of Windsor. We'll play soccer for the University of Windsor, stay with our parents, save a lot of money, and have a good time. So that's exactly what I did. I thought initially, honestly, I was there to play soccer my first 2 years. And then you go, oh, wait. This is not going to last forever. You're not going to make a whole lot of money doing this. You need to go and really invest in your education. And so I graduated from the University of Windsor with I think I have a journal. It's a dual journalism degree and an English degree.
Okay, so you're a year older than me, and
okay.
I took journalism at the college, so we were probably in school at similar times.
Yeah, definitely. And the college, I do feel like it's probably a bit of a different experience, and so many talented people have come out of the college, obviously, and I feel like the training there, it's real world. So. Yeah, I don't know.
I actually teach there now in the program, just one class, a semester. Well, I've taught in 2 now. I taught a podcasting class, and I teach photography is like the main class.
See, that's cool. We weren't learning podcasting when we were going to school. That's awesome.
Dan McDonald was my podcasting teacher when I took it 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's how I met Dan and like became kind of friends with him.
Yeah. Great guy. Great guy.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's really cool. And then, I saw that you took a job out east.
Yep.
Where was that job?
Yeah. So I started here in Windsor and I did about, 2 years. I thought this is it, like I've landed my dream job in the city that I'm from. How is this possible? And then 2 years in, I had a boss that said to me, "Are you just going to spend, the rest of your career here doing this?" And I was like, "Well, maybe." And she's like, "Well, go do something. Go look around. You're young." So yeah, I got an opportunity out in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador for the CBC as well. And I don't know what it was in my gut. It felt like the right decision. So I packed everything up and I moved out there. And I didn't even have like a real contract. Like it was like, I'm like, I'll see how the next 6 months go. It was like one of those.
You were already with CBC though.
Yes, I was. So I was kind of transferring.
Yeah, that's cool.
And but and I'm a real homebody. I hadn't moved away from school or anything like that. So anyways, I went out east and it was the best decision of my life.
That's cool.
Yeah. I have such fond memories of St. John's. I'm like a walking, talking Newfoundland and Labrador tourism ad because it was such an amazing chapter of my life. And to be honest, I could have stayed out there forever and ever if it wasn't for the fact that my family is all here. And not for a day do you forget that you live on a piece of rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean there. Like, it's very isolated and the weather is tough. Yeah.
How long were you there for?
I was there for almost 4 years. I think it was like 3.5. Yeah.
That's a long time.
And I mean, like I said, I signed on my lease even, I signed like a 6 month because I just wasn't sure if I could cut it really. Yeah. And I've made so many friends. And it was at such a good time in my life in the sense I was about 23. So I was like 23 to 26, 27. And like I said, I'd never moved away before. And I know anybody listening who has, like, it gives you such a different perspective on things, moving away and experiencing kind of a different culture because it really is a different culture out east. Mm-hmm. So it was great for my growth and development. And the other thing is, on top of doing really good journalism out there, it really benefited my career. But, forcing yourself to meet people. And I've met friends that I will have for the rest of my life. Like my girlfriends, the girls that I met in St. John's will stand in my wedding one day,
Yeah.
And picking friends with a full frontal lobe is a different experience than perhaps being born, like I also have best friends who I grew up with for years and years and years. And that's awesome. And they mean so much to me, but it's also kind of cool picking friends as an adult as well. And St. John's really allowed me to do that. So I owe so much to that little city. If you ever get a chance to go to St. John's, go.
I want to go. Actually, tickets there are really cheap, like in like next week.
Oh, well then
it's like $200
get on
round
that.
trip.
You've never been to the East Coast?
No.
You would love it. I tell everybody this.
Yeah, I want to go shoot photos there.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. So, do you like seafood?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They got great seafood. Yeah.
I'm assuming,
you eat a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your job out there? Like, what were you actually doing at CBC?
Yeah. So I was a reporter, like out in the field type reporter. Oh. And the great thing about working in a place like St. John's is it's not a huge shop. There's not a ton of employees, and it's not a huge province. Like the population is very low, but you're covering an entire province, and it's a larger piece of. Well, it is. It's a large piece of land. So, I got to, go to the far north part of the province. I got to go to Labrador, which is the mainland off the island. I did some really cool stories like, taking a helicopter, landing on an icebreaker that was stuck in the middle of a strait. And, some of these adventures really that I would never get to do, even in a place like Windsor, Ontario, just based on the fact that there's a lot of wilderness, there's not a lot of people, but there's a lot of land, and just kind of being in a small station that covers a ton of news daily. So you name it, fires, anything like that, I was your girl out there. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of fun there, like when you weren't working? Like, what do you like to do for fun when you're not working?
Well, my idea of fun was a lot different there than it is here. And I think just because they're very outdoorsy there. Like, there's so many gorgeous hiking trails that are hiked really all year long. You get the snowshoes on and do that sort of thing. And, St. John's is such a quaint, beautiful little city as well. I walked a lot more. Like I know a lot of ways I was a little bit more active in the community. Yeah. They've got a ton of great breweries out there. And even like the fishing and the hiking and all that, you're just doing that a lot more. Here in Windsor, that's a good question. What are my? I still play a lot of sports. I still play soccer. Of course, I've got good friends here. I don't know. I try to be a bit of a tourist in my own little, when something new pops open, I'm out there. My parents also live in Essex. Okay. And so I grew up, born and raised in Essex. They have a 40-acre piece of property. Oh, cool. So kind of grew up like a county kid. So I am like all the time. I'm out in Amherstburg at a coffee shop. I'm out in Harrow doing this. I'm at Colasanti. So I feel like I really utilize the entire Windsor, Essex region because I kind of grew up right in the heart of it, really right in the center of Essex County. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm always bopping around. I don't know if that counts as a hobby, bopping around.
That's okay. Yeah, like I find when I'm at home, like a lot of the things I'm doing is all based around like friends and family.
Definitely.
And when you travel, it's about like the things that you're doing.
Yes, and the friends that I met in St. John's that were local, like I'd be like, have you ever done this? And they're like, no. But because you're being a tourist all the time. And it's the same here in Windsor where it's like, yeah, we could be tourists a bit more in our own city, right? Yeah. I go to Detroit quite a bit. Yeah. I think a lot of us, especially younger people, there's so much to do there.
There is, yeah, for sure.
The sights and the sounds are all there, yeah.
Did going out there for work, like, do you enjoy traveling now? Like, do you travel a lot, or do you mostly just stay here?
Yeah, no, definitely, and it definitely opened my eyes a little bit to that as well. Actually, when I moved out there, I also started traveling quite a bit for work. My first Olympic gig was when I was out in St. John's. So my first one was Tokyo, and then I traveled around for CBC Sports. I went to Belgium and a number of other places. Cool. So yeah, that kind of got me into it as well. Like being forced to do it for, I shouldn't say forced. I mean, it was a privilege to do it, but seeing different parts of the world like that. And my parents, they've always been kind of travelers. So that's always been a bit of a passion for mine. I wish that I could do it more. I say that from a time perspective, and also from a budget perspective, because you have money coming in, and you can't be putting all of it out to travel. But when I get the opportunity, I definitely take it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love traveling. I try to travel as much as I can.
Yeah, it's a hard balance, right? Especially being young, like everything's so expensive. We just bought a house, my partner and I. Like, congrats. Oh my gosh, that's challenging, right? So then it's like you got to make some executive decisions. Like, where do you want to put your money?
Yeah, there's always something else. I always try to keep travel at probably a higher priority than most people do, which isn't like, the smartest thing to always do. But at the same time, like I'm about to turn 30 and I look back and everybody's like, oh, turning 30. Like, everybody like turning 30, like you feel like you're getting older. Like I feel like 30 is like a real adult, right?
I know.
And I look back on my 20s and the main thing I think about is like all the traveling.
Yeah,
like,
that's great.
Like, okay, like the traveling was like, made it like my 20s, like kind of worth it or whatever.
No, I wish I could almost have done more of that. Like when I hear, people like you talk and some of my friends who've done some hardcore traveling, I'm always like, oh my gosh, like maybe I should have done a bit more of that. I think also because I got the job at CBC before I even graduated. I didn't have that like, what should I do with my career? Like what do I really want to do? You know what? I'm going to take a year or two, travel around. Like I didn't do that because I got thrown into it so quickly, which I'm grateful for. But, I haven't had probably more than, 2 or 3 consecutive weeks off, for the last 10 years,
what's funny is we're complete opposite, but because I always wanted to like go live somewhere else and try something, but I started working for myself full time when I was 19. So
good for you. See, that's the way to go.
So like, because of that, I was like, like I have to stay in Windsor, and then I don't have to have a job. Like I get to work for myself. Yeah. But if I go live somewhere else, I have to get a job, and I'd rather live here, maybe, which like isn't like, I didn't think it was as cool. But I get to travel because I work for myself.
Oh, I wish we could switch brains. Like, I know. It's always the grass is
you
always
can't do both, right?
I know. It's true. It's true. But
both were great experiences, right?
I think,
I'm sure.
Great experiences. I feel so lucky and lucky for the choices that, came my way and I took. But at the same time, I always like working for yourself and making your own hours and all that. I mean, sacrifices need to be, made. It's hard work. But part of me is like, as somebody who's worked kind of like a steady job for somebody else for years and years, I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to work on my own time.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to have a job.
I get that.
It'd be nice for work to end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. You're going to sleep with work on your mind and you're waking up with it. Yeah, definitely.
Or to like be able to like relay things to like a boss. You're like, oh, this
someone
is
to bounce it off of.
Yeah. Yeah, like
this is not my problem.
I don't know how to do that or whatever. But it's like when you work for yourself, it's like, oh, well, you better figure it out.
And let me tell you, there's lots of people in the office like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to command find. Oh, okay, well, press the Control F button.
Okay, I guess I want to talk about some of the Olympic stuff you got to do. So you went to Tokyo was the first one.
Yep.
You've been to 3.
Yeah, I kind of got a little bit weird with COVID. So Tokyo was my first one.
Was that COVID Tokyo? That was the COVID one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. So Tokyo and then, oh my gosh, Meg. And then Beijing, China, and then the last one, Paris. So Tokyo I went to, it was very, very strange. No spectators were allowed, nobody in the stands. And my little team, we followed around the women's national soccer team who ended up winning a gold medal at Tokyo. For somebody who's a huge soccer fan and played, it was like...
Canada won?
Canada won.
The women's won the gold medal?
Yes, the gold medal. It was like unbelievable. Now you can imagine we're in this massive stadium. The women's team's just won this gold medal. There's no cheering, no clapping. There's nobody in the stadium because of COVID. I shouldn't say, maybe 100 people, and we're talking staff, FIFA personnel and that kind of thing. Some reporters.
But 100 people's nothing compared to 50,000
You can't even hear, especially you're sitting in a stadium that can fit like 15,000, right?
Yeah.
So it was really, really strange. Now, Tokyo is an amazing city. I would go back to Japan in a heartbeat. So that was a really neat experience. And then I was supposed to go to China, to Beijing, and I caught COVID right before.
You got COVID?
Yeah.
No,
yeah. I got COVID. It was devastating. As somebody who has, I've put so much effort, so much pain into my career. And these are big moments, obviously. And then to be like, yeah, Meg, you can't go. You've got COVID.
What year was that?
So that was 2 years ago. So that would have been 2022.
Which was winter?
It was winter. Yeah, it was winter. And it actually wasn't that it's the Chinese government, they were testing the level of COVID in your body at a higher threshold. So I was over COVID. I had a bunch of negative tests, but the CBC was too concerned about sending a number of us who might still have it in our bodies if you were testing at that higher threshold, which I completely understand the rationale behind it, but was I heartbroken, obviously. Yeah. So anyways, I ended up flying to Toronto and basically worked as a digital host. Yeah. Cool. And it was the same. I did the same thing for the Paris Olympics, went to Toronto and was a digital host.
So you didn't go to Paris?
No.
We went to Tokyo.
Yes. Yep.
That must have been super awesome.
It's super awesome.
How long were you there for?
So it's quite an extensive period of time. I think we were there for about a month.
Whoa.
Yes, because, the Olympics, I'm trying to think, they're like they're not quite 3 weeks, but with opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies, they want you on the ground, of course, before. You have to kind of get adjusted your body in the time zone. Mm-hmm. And that was challenging because you're working full out. I was working 16-hour days and you're doing it so jet lagged in a country that, you're trying to navigate a transit system and all that sort of thing. So it's a very intense operation, the Olympics.
How many people were you with that you were like working with that you came there with?
So I was working with a little group of 3.
Whoa.
So it was myself, a former Olympian, and our videographer, our camera operator. And
that's it?
Well, that's it. But we were just one of several groups.
Gotcha.
So, we got kind of dispatched or assigned to the women's national team. There would have been other crews assigned to, tennis or whatever it was,
Yeah.
So, and then behind the scenes, there is obviously, it's a huge operation. So there's definitely a few hundred people that are working behind the scenes to make the Olympics run from a broadcast standpoint.
Wow. That's really cool.
That was definitely and will probably always be one of the hugest kind of honors of my career is doing the Olympics, because not everybody gets to work on them. And it's a surreal experience, being close to these athletes and hearing their stories and the sacrifices they've made is really rewarding.
Were you covering the games or were you interviewing like athletes personally there?
More interviewing athletes personal. So
Cool.
there's a team that kind of commentates on the games and provides analysis. We weren't doing that. We were really on the ground. Like we would go to every single practice with the women's team and we'd interview a number of players before or after practice. And we kind of got to know them kind of, you know, just from being around so much. And yeah, just, you know, kind of delivering the news on the ground. Oh, you know, practices change times. Or I remember it was so warm one day in Tokyo that they changed the time of one of the kind of big games because it was so hot. So just kind of relaying that information back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you, where did you guys stay during this? Just like a hotel, normal hotel?
Yeah, they put you up at a hotel, the CBC, obviously. And our situation was a little bit different than most of the other crews because the women's soccer, they actually traveled around the country. So they were not in one stadium. So we actually ended up going to Sapporo, which we got on a flight to go to Sapporo. So we flew within the country. Then they also played out kind of on the east side of Japan. So we just followed them around, which was a little bit unusual or a little bit different than what the other crews were doing.
That sounds more fun though.
Oh, it was
And
way
more
more
tiring.
fun. It was more, sure, but it was, you know, you pack a little bag and you go away for 2 days and then you come back to Tokyo. Like it was.
And you kept the hotel room in Tokyo? Like you
Yes.
left your stuff
Yep.
there?
Yep, we did.
Yeah,
Yep. And
that's
then,
cool.
because, you know, when you're just gone for such a short period of time and in the rooms, I shouldn't say all of them, but especially in some of the more rural parts of Japan, the rooms are so tiny there. Like these big, luxurious North American hotel rooms, like they didn't exist in Japan. I shouldn't say, I'm sure there's some hotels like that, but these teeny tiny little hotels, which honestly you don't need much more, but everywhere we went, it was experience.
Yeah, like we always talk about that, like, you know, space, and it's like we have so much room here. It's crazy.
And we think we need it. Like, you know. We feel entitled, I feel like, to space and, I don't know, things that are luxurious that, you know, it doesn't have to be like that.
Like we have a 3-bedroom house. We have no kids, and people are like, "Are you guys gonna move?" Because like we've been here for a while now. And I'm like, "No, we're not gonna move. We got 3 bedrooms,
We
only
got
2
more than
people."
enough room.
Like, no, I'm not gonna move.
Fair.
Even if
Yes.
I had 1 kid or even 2 kids, I would still stay here.
As someone who lived in Toronto, wow, like here, just living in Windsor is, you know, different because it feels like even in Toronto, there's no room to do anything.
Yeah.
Walking on the streets, driving in your little tiny condos, it's like, yeah, even that feels a little claustrophobic sometimes.
I go to New York and California a lot.
Okay.
And yeah, like the difference, like all those, like there's a million people in California, but they have some room, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe not like downtown LA is probably more
But there's
like,
spaces where you can go and
yeah, like everything's more spread out. Like, you know, there's houses there and like, yeah, San Diego and LA and San Francisco are big cities, just like, you know, not as big as New York, but they're big cities where things are tight. But like, there's also neighborhoods everywhere. Like LA is surrounded with neighborhoods with houses, but then New York is everybody's just like
on top of each
crammed.
other.
Yeah,
Yes.
8 million people on a little island.
Oh, that was living in Toronto was like, it was not for me.
How long did you live there for?
I lived there for almost 1 year.
Okay.
And I moved in. My sister and I got a place, which honestly was really fun. Last time that we're probably ever going to live together.
Yeah.
And we get along so well. My sister, like, truly is my best friend. So that was great. But, you know, I'm a county girl. And I moved straight from St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, which arguably is the nicest city in Canada, and I moved straight downtown Toronto, and it was like a shock to my system. And I don't know if I just was too old for it, you know. And I know I've got girlfriends there that are my age, and they just love it. I don't know what it was. I just like I could not like kick it in Toronto. I don't know if maybe I wasn't cool enough. Maybe like I needed some farm field and some space. I found it really, really hard.
My wife hates the big cities. Like we go to Toronto, San Francisco, New York, wherever, but she's not a huge city fan. She likes when we go other places more.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. Is she from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
See, come on. We're small town people.
I like to just experience because like you see all these places in movies, like especially in New York and California, and I just love love getting to go like live there for a week and just like experience that life.
I totally get that. And like, you know, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I can't believe people live like this 24/7, you know, for years and years, especially when it's so different from the way that you were brought up or the way you grew up. Like, yeah, I lived on 40 acres in the middle of nowhere. We've got one neighbor. I remember I used to think about people who lived in Essex, the town of Essex. I thought, oh my gosh, they're so lucky. They can walk to the corner store. They can go get a freezy whenever they want. Like, I was so envious of that, you know? So it is, like you said, it's interesting to live in a completely different space, living for me downtown Toronto. As much as I was like, oh, this isn't for me, it was really fascinating to be like, oh my gosh, people, they're raising children in these condos, and you know, that's their way of life, which, you know, feels so different from mine.
If it wasn't for my wife, I would have lived in all of these places, because every time we go somewhere, I'm like, let's stay here. Let's stay here. We live here now, you know?
Pack it up. Yeah.
We did, years ago, we toyed with the idea of moving to Vancouver.
Okay.
And we actually went out there and even looked at apartments, but we didn't do it.
Are you regretful of that? Or
No.
No, okay.
So our plan was to rent out our house and then go.
Love that, yep.
But no,
It's
good
hard,
here.
I know. Making a decision like that, it's hard. It's hard. I think, I don't know, I'm really changing the conversation, but I think like being young is kind of hard, you know? Like, is that the right decision? Moving to Vancouver, moving to Toronto, or starting work for yourself, working that corporate job, like all these decisions, you know?
I was at the university this morning. I was doing some work in the law building. I was just photographing something, and I was like, man, like, these students they're in law school, so they're in grad school. So they're only like, I don't know, they're probably only a couple years younger than me. Maybe not even. Some of them are my age, but like they're mid-20s, I'm late 20s. And I'm like, wow, like I was looking back and I was like if you want to change your mind like on things, you know, you can always do it. But
100%.
when you're it sucks that in your 20s, like you can only pick one thing, and that takes like 4 or 5 years to do. And it's like, oh, like you only get that chance to do it like for the first time once, I guess.
It also never feels like you have that option, which we need to stop thinking like that. Like, you know, the thought for me to go back to school and do something different right now is like, oh, I could never ever do that. And it's like, well, I'm 30. Like, yes, you absolutely could. Yeah. Like, and I mean, I don't have a real desire to do that. I feel lucky with the career path I chose. Yeah. But it is, I feel with we put this pressure on ourselves, like you got to figure it out so early on. And it's like, yeah, we've only had fully like working frontal lobes for not even 10 years. Let's be real here.
See, you know what's funny is I kind of did I picked that I wanted to be a photographer and work for myself, and I did it, and I've been doing it for 10 years, and I did it and everything, and there's still a part of me that's like, oh, it would have been cool to do this, it would have been cool to do that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was always like, yeah, but like this was like my dream. Like this is what I want to do, and you know, I'm not going to change this because I love it.
I can relate to that so much. That was exactly what happened to me, basically, is, you know, I wanted to do this since I actually did an episode for National Geographic for kids. Do you remember that? It was on TVO, I think. It was like, anyways, it was basically National Geographic, but for little kids.
Okay. When was this? Like,
oh my gosh. I was like 12.
Oh, okay.
And it was really popular. Well, it was popular in my household. I can't speak for everybody's, but you know, and we had we're getting into a weirder story, but we had a pet owl growing up, a great horned owl. My dad is an environmentalist, conservationist type person. Anyways, we had this pet owl. It had papers. This was legal. And I did this episode for National Geographic for kids, and with the owl and with the lights and the TV and cameras, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I was about That's 12. Cool. Yeah, I love storytelling, and this is such a cool medium to do that. And so I really thought I was going to do this. And I go into university, and I had a guidance counselor actually that said to me, I said, I want to be on TV. I want to do the news. And he was like, you're never, ever going to be able to do that in this market, and you're going to have to move. And it was very pessimistic. Like, this is not good for you. And I remember going home and saying to my mom, like, oh my gosh, this guidance counselor says I'm never, ever going to be able to do this. And I remember my mom looking at me and saying, well, someone has to do it. Why can't it be you? Yeah. You know? And so from day one, it was like, that was what I wanted to do. And it worked out for me, which is, I'm very grateful for that, you know, that is the how things progress. But it is funny, like to the point that you just made of like, what else would have I done?
Yeah.
You know, or what else could I do? Am I going to love this forever and ever? I've done it for 10 years, you know?
I've always played sports. I still do. Like, I'm a really active person, always doing stuff. And a part of me was like, it would have been cool to do something like a little bit more physically active.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
Be like a firefighter or something like that, where like I'm just like moving around more. And like, and the other thing is too, it would have been cool to do a job where you're helping people.
Oh, I totally agree.
Which I like. Yeah, like I do a lot of meaningful things for people, and I've done photos and videos for people, and then those people have passed away, and it's nice for their families and all that's really great. But like, I don't like really help people with my job, and that would have been nice to do too. But
I know, but like, I could have never been like a nurse. I don't have the guts for it. Like, I see some of my friends in the hospitals and whatnot, and I'm like, oh, you are doing work that the average person cannot do, you know? So as much as to your point, I would love to have a job that directly impacts people in a positive way. But you have to be skilled to do those jobs. And I don't know if I have that skill set.
You got it. Yeah, it's, you know, you do what you're good at.
Yeah, definitely.
I think at the end of the day, though, like, it's best to do the thing that you love the most, which like I do, and so do you.
Definitely.
So, you know, that's what you're best at, and that's what, like, even on the days where you, like the hard days where you don't like work and everything, like, you still like love what you do. Right.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And you know what? In this industry, especially working in news, there's some real bad days and there's some really good days. Like, you know, the really bad days is, I mean, you're going to like car crashes or you're covering a really nasty trial at court that just breaks your heart. Like those types of days where it's really, really heavy. And then you've got days where, you know, I remember doing a story in Newfoundland about this woman that couldn't receive she was going blind and she needed to receive these drugs that were covered by the government, but they were no longer going to be covered by the government. We do this story and all of a sudden the government changes their policy and now these drugs are affordable to this woman, so she won't go blind. And so those are the days where you kind of are a little bit a part of the change and you go, oh, wow, like, this is why I'm doing this job, you know, like this is why, you know, the bad days you can get through for the days where you can see something a bit more tangible, you know?
Yeah, like I think from the outside looking in, like at my career, you would think like it's a job where, like you're not really helping people, but like when you're deep in it, like there are things like you just talked about where people are being like affected in a positive way from what you do, which is really cool.
I think most jobs are like that, right? Like we might not see them on the outsides, but in every little way, when you get real down into the nitty gritty of it, you know?
Like obviously like a doctor, nurse, teacher, it's like evident.
100%. Yeah.
You know, paramedic.
You're doing God's work.
Obviously, you know, it's easy to see that you have a positive impact on people. But the other jobs, it's like different. It's like, you know, you have to maybe know a little bit more details, but you still are doing things for other people, right?
For sure.
Which is cool. Okay, we're going to get away from the dark stuff and talk about light-hearted stuff now. Okay, so your show. Did you just start at, like, when did you leave CBC?
Right before, really.
Okay.
It's kind of a long, I was working at the CBC and I'd been there for a really, really long time. And I'd been really loyal to the CBC. I learned so much working for that corporation. And then Lisa Williams retired and, you know, huge name in our community with an unbelievable reputation. And after meeting her, I can completely understand why people fell in love with her, because she is so genuine and she really is a special person. But somebody had come up to me and said, have you ever thought of applying for that job? And, you know, the news girl, that's what I've been. I was like, what? You know, talk show host? No, I haven't really. And they said, you know, I think, you know, you've got a big personality. I think that, and you know news and you know the community so well, this could be a good fit for you. So I kind of started thinking about it a little bit more. I'm not going to lie, the 3:30 a.m. wake up time kind of scared me.
That's my next question.
Was it? Yeah.
Is that what time you wake up at? 3:30 every day?
Yeah. Yeah. So that spooked me. There was a number of things that kind of like spooked me a little bit because it's different, right? And people, we aren't naturally comfortable with being uncomfortable. So it was like, so I was thinking about it, but there were a lot of pros, like, you know, AM 800 is so in the community. That was one of the biggest draws for me. You know, everyone knows them. The show is so well listened to. They have such a large, really kind of neat, unique community. And I love like being out, we go to the Spitfire games and drop the pucks, and we're speaking at charity events and, auctioning off something. Like those are the types of things that I was interested in, because this community has given me so much. I feel really passionate about trying to give back where I can, and I felt like this job allowed me to do that. And, waking up with people on their morning commute and getting them started, I thought that was really neat. And what I really love about the way that the show is done, which is, complete kudos to Mike and Lisa and even Cam, who came before, is that it's this perfect mix of information and entertainment, infotainment. Mike always says that, so you're getting people started. Here's what you need to know. Here's the news. Here's the local news. Even something as small as, the garbage day is being backed up and it won't get picked up until tomorrow. Like these small things that impact people's lives to things much bigger. We're talking right now a lot about, obviously the federal government situation and Donald Trump and the tariffs and all that. So we cover so much in this. It's really kind of fun to deliver that news to people. Here's what you need to know waking up, but also like, hey, let's have a little bit of fun. Like, look at this new study. Are you going to drink camel's milk? Camel's milk is the new thing, So that all of those were real pros to, applying for the job. And then, I went through an audition process, obviously, to make sure Mike and I fit, because that's huge. As you know, as somebody who has a podcast and interviews people all day, if you don't fit with somebody, it's going to be really hard to do 4 hours of live radio, right? So I auditioned with Mike, and then, I said yes to the offer, and, quit the job at CBC and started at AM 800. It was within a few weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Under the last point you just made, with doing the podcast and like fitting with a co-host, like with my guests, like so many times people recommend people to come on the show.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, like what they do is really cool and everything. When I have guests on, I have to be currently genuinely interested in what they're doing.
You have to be, yes.
Or I'm not gonna interview them well. Like if I'm not curious about you, it's just not gonna. I have to be curious about you.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know if you feel this way, but I know, having interviewed people for the last 10 years, like sometimes you get somebody who's just maybe a little bit nervous, a little bit into their shell. And it's like, you're trying and sometimes it just might not jive. Or like you said, if you don't have interest in what they're talking about or what they're into, I can imagine like you're doing this for an hour. That's got to be challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keeping that up for an hour.
Yeah. I've never really ran into the issue, because like even sometimes like it might have been a better idea for me to have you on this week than 6 months ago. Like, and sometimes it's good. Like, so we never met before until today. I actually kind of prefer that, because I can ask you, I don't know anything about you. So it's like really easy to interview you. Yeah, that's great,
isn't it? Yeah.
But having people like the closer I'm with to you, like it's harder to have you on because I already know everything. So it feels like fake asking you things I know. So we kind of have to like, you know what I mean?
And, definitely. And the things that are interesting about that person, if you already know them, they become kind of like, well, I already know that about you, despite it being interesting to somebody else.
Exactly.
Hearing it for the first time.
Like if you were friends with like an A-list celebrity, like say you were friends with like Johnny Depp, for whatever reason you're friends with Johnny Depp.
But
he, even though he's like really famous, if you guys were close friends, he wouldn't interest you like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though he's so interesting, right?
I completely get what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys are 5 to 9 every day?
5 a.m. to 9 a.m. You got it.
What time's Dan? Is he 9 to 12?
Yes, he comes on right after us. We actually do a little bit of an overlap with Dan. So he comes on for the last 10 minutes of our show, and then he does a solo show, which, oh my gosh, I've hosted the show now solo without Mike. It is so hard because you're just talking to yourself. So I always say that to Dan. I'm like, I don't know how you do no co-host. And of course he's interviewing lots of people all day, but and that's what it feels like. You're just sitting there in front of a microphone talking to yourself. And it's like, I am not that interesting to, like, I'm boring myself, doing this. So, kudos to Dan. But I mean, he's a real expert. He's been doing it for a very long time, and he's a wildly engaging person. So he can pull it off. But yeah, it's nice having a co-host.
He's probably used from just like being on the river and just like the ramblings in between the songs you're playing.
Oh yeah, and I mean he's good at it, and he's interesting, But it really you have to have some real confidence about you to do it, because I noticed that I'm a pretty confident person, but the second Mike was removed from the equation and it was just me, I was like so. Like, oh my gosh, what should I say? Was that dumb? Did that sound stupid? Like, it's hard on your confidence, because it's just like you're speaking in a empty room by yourself,
The first time I was ever interviewed anywhere and anything was in your building. I was still a student, and I had my first show coming up, art show, and Dan had me on his show Here and Now, just to talk about my show. And I was only like, I don't know, 20, maybe 19, whatever. And even though Here and Now got played on Sundays, I don't think he actually went in on Sundays.
Yeah, he recorded a bit earlier.
Yeah. So it was like a Tuesday, and he was on the river during his time. So it was like 7 p.m. And I just went in, and I was sitting in the booth, and he was like doing river stuff, just like playing songs. And then he's like, he like lined up 3 songs. He's like, okay, we got like 15 minutes to do our interview. And so the river's going, I'm just sitting in this booth, and he asked me questions, and I was like, man, I have no idea what I said. Like,
you black out a little, 100%.
Yeah.
When I was younger and I started in news, like on in TV news, I would finish a hit on the 6 o'clock news. I couldn't even remember what I said. It was like I honestly was blacking out, and I had to go to coworkers and been like, "Did I give them that fact? Did I say that the tax rate was going up by 12% or by 2%?" Like, I couldn't even remember, because when you're so nervous like that, it's like you're buzzing almost.
You have a teleprompter when you guys did that? Like, were you reading off a teleprompter?
The 6 o'clock news, as a host, you have a teleprompter, but if you're out in the fields, you don't. So you memorize it. Everyone has a different, way they work, memorize bulletin points. Some people memorize their entire 4-minute spiel. So it really comes down to your preference. Your memorizing skills do get really, really good, when you're out in the field, because you're not supposed to look down at papers. It's supposed to be right to camera, but you've got so many facts, and I spoke to this person and that person, and they said this and they said that, but you're doing it all from the top of your head.
And you're nervous.
And you might not have even finished your story until, 5:30, the news at 6. I used to, when I was hosting, I would still be writing, like, we're talking like 30 seconds to the start of the show. And there's a countdown in your ear, 10, 9, and I'm running up to the booth.
Wow.
Running up to the desk to get ready.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's quick paced. It's very, very quick pace.
When I was a journalism student, we had the college goes live every day in Windsor at 1 o'clock. Or is it every day? Yeah, live at 1.
Yeah, they
live
do a
at
lot.
1.
They do
get
a
5
lot
minutes.
of live stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they get 5 minutes every day on one of the local channels at 1 o'clock. And when you're a student, so like a lot of people are in a TV, like people like you, and then they would do it like once a week through the semester. But I wasn't into TV. I was into like writing and photography, obviously.
Oh, that's great. Yep.
So, but you still had to do it twice in the semester.
Oh.
So you had to like wear a suit to school and read the teleprompter, and you would sit there and like read the teleprompter for like half an hour. Just for like again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
And man, that was so nerve wracking. I could only imagine. But I'm sure it gets easier when you're doing it every single day, right?
It gets so much easier. In fact, it gets to the point where it's so normal that it's almost like I wish a bit of that nervousness would come back, because it's good to be nervous, to keep you on your toes a little bit. But it's funny, you're speaking about journalism school, and there's 2 different people obviously at journalism school. And those are the ones that, they want to do the photos and they want to write. And then there's those that want to be on air, on camera. And see, I think what helped is I always wanted to be on camera. Like, that was a passion of mine. Where if it's not a passion of yours, well, then it's not going to be a good fit, right?
Yep.
So but definitely when I started, I could have, your hands are shaking. It's almost like you can't. You're like, I hope my legs don't give out. I hope my knees are strong, because you feel like you're swaying. But yeah, by the end of 10 years in now, it's almost like, okay, wake up, you're almost on air. Let's go, look alive. Jeez.
Yeah, it's good to be nervous. Like like the main thing I do in terms of my business is weddings. I shoot weddings. So they always say if you're not nervous shooting a wedding, like even 10 years in, you shouldn't be doing them anymore if they don't make you nervous.
Because you can't get complacent.
It's too important.
Yes, of course. You need that. You need that big. Oh my gosh, you need that big moment. Yeah.
So you should be nervous. You should be confident, but a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe even nervous isn't the right word, but you should just be like on your toes.
Definitely.
You know? Yeah.
I have like a sweet spot, and it's kind of being an athlete. Like being an athlete for the majority of my life. You start to really, especially at the university level, they really kind of try and educate you on your best performance, your peak performance, and like different levels of performing. And a lot of that has actually crossed over into my broadcast career. Like I know when I'm too much. I know when I'm not anxious enough. Like I have a real sweet spot of like, and mine is probably way more anxious than the average person, but that's where I'm performing my best. And I try and get myself there. But yeah, sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you're too much. Like you're almost buzzing and then you don't perform well. So yeah, trying to get used to like, this is my sweet spot in terms of that excitement to the anxiety ratio.
Yeah, for sure. My thing with the podcast, this is a little slightly different, but I always try to make sure that, I'm cool if you talk the whole time or 80% of the time or 90% of the time. Like, I'm like, hey, that was good. Like, they talked most of the time because I'm on every single one. Like, I don't really need to talk. But if it's like a 50-50 conversation, that's great too.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the one who talks the most for sure. But sometimes I have people on and I feel like if I can pick up that they're nervous, I'll jump in and try to talk more to make them feel less nervous. But then I'm like, oh, I'm talking too much. Like,
I think that I think you're. I mean, I've listened to some of your episodes, and I mean, you're doing a phenomenal job. And I think that's exactly what you should be doing is like reading the room, basically. And even I do that. Even I can tell when somebody's nervous or they've indicated that they're nervous. And I always do this thing where I get them to say their first name and last name. Very easy question. Can you spell it out for me? Very easy question. And then I'll ask them something like that is so irrelevant. So, do you live in Windsor? Oh yeah. When did you move here? And I'll talk to them about things that really I'm not going to use, when I go and cut the tape later, but it's enough to just get them talking on camera, get them talking into the microphone, get them comfortable hearing the sound of their own voice. And then we can go into, okay, so you're putting this fundraiser on. Why did you decide to do that fundraiser? Whatever it is, So I definitely have, developed little tricks over the years to get the best out of people. Because that's really what we're doing is I want to get the best out of somebody, because when it goes on air and everybody gets to see it, yeah, you want them to be at their... You want to make them look good.
That's a 10 out of 10 tip. That's a pro tip right there. Yeah. It was great because then the first thing that they said on camera wasn't that daunting question.
Yeah.
It was their name.
Yeah. And like this took like lots of years. I remember being like super young and like walking up to somebody and just being like, so, it was like the most personal, like your house caught fire, and they were just like, yeah. And then you learn like, okay, you cannot approach an interview like that, especially sensitive interviews. And I think the media industry, I really do believe this, is getting better at being more sensitive. It is not a sensitive industry, period. Like when I started, it can be mean, it can be cutthroat. I think because we're working to such close deadline all the time and breaking news can be stressful, it's an intense environment, but I really feel like there's progress being made on how we approach people who we are going to interview. And I am so passionate about making sure it's a good experience for people, and gone are the days when you just throw a microphone in somebody's face and go, answer this, no, I don't approach interviews like that anymore at all. And, giving people even like the choice, like of course they have a choice, but being sensitive around, is this person in the right mind to have this conversation with me? Because we're covering really challenging subjects. Sometimes a family member has passed away, so really making sure they understand what they're consenting to. Like this is going to go on Instagram. This might go on a web page. This is where this could go. Yep. Are you in the right space to answer my questions right now? And if no, we're not doing it. you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I think the industry is changing for the better in that way because it was so cutthroat. And I know that if, you know, some of the older people, some of the vets, the people who've retired, they might hear these comments and go, well, you know, it's the news and you're not supposed to sugarcoat it and all this.
Yeah.
And we're not sugarcoating it. We're just being
Respectful?
responsible. Yeah.
Respectful?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know?
You just said a term that made me, so you said passed away. When I was in school, you never write passed away, you write
don't.
died.
Yeah.
You
And
write
we
they're
still,
dead.
We still don't.
Yeah.
We still in
They
journalism
didn't
say
pass away,
they
they died.
Yes.
That's what the
definitely.
teacher always said.
Yes.
They didn't pass away, they died.
And-
I was like, okay, all
And
right.
here's the thing, and that goes to my point of like, we're not sugarcoating it. We're going to call it like it is.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to use the right language, but I think it's approaching people. You know, like in an interview, I don't feel comfortable walking up to somebody and being like, tell me about your brother died.
Yeah.
You know, I'm never going to be like that in an interview. And it's not fair, you know,
Yeah.
to somebody who's really going through something.
Yeah, for sure. And you're not, you know, you're not being biased or anything because you're showing sympathy for something like that.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. And like I said, this is like, maybe this is even like a hot take because I know that there are other journalists out there who, don't feel the same way that I do about it. But I just think in this day and age, and with the media climate the way it is, like, you know, back even, I don't know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when somebody came and interviewed you with a camera, it was going on the 6 o'clock news and you'd never see it again. That's not happening anymore. It's going on the 6 o'clock news. It's going in a web page. It's going on radio, and it could be a screenshot and it's put on an Instagram page for whoever wants to see it. Like that, you know, there comes more responsibility with that type of audience.
True. Yeah, that's a good perspective. So you finish your show at 9 and
Yeah.
you wake up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
What does your day look like? I want to know your day.
Okay, so I wake up at 3:30 and we're in the station for about 4:30. Mike and I, well, I'll take you through the full day. We're in there for 4:30. Show starts at 5. And we do the 4 hours. Sometimes it goes very seamlessly. We talk about the things that we plan to talk about. Sometimes it's just like we've got people calling in, bad weather, and it's like everything is just off the rails and it's like a free-for-all. And then at 9, Mike and I usually are out of there. So it's kind of odd. We're leaving work at the same time that most people are starting work at. And then, you know, there's a lot of engagements that we do, like, you know, for example, something like this, you know, doing a podcast or something, or going to a community event or meeting sponsors. So we have some of those during the day. And then at about 3 o'clock, we actually start working on the show for the next morning.
You guys meet back up for that, or you just do it on your own?
We do it kind of over the computer.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're at home doing it.
At 3 o'clock?
At 3 o'clock,
Okay.
yep. And then we'll just start like booking, like we're booking interviews. Okay, let's reach out to the Prime Minister's office or whoever it is.
For the next day, or you maybe
for
a
the
couple
next
days in
morning.
advance? Wow.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a couple, but normally it's the next morning.
Wow.
And same thing, like we always ask ourselves this is, what are people talking about in Windsor, Essex? And whether that's a national story, a local story, we always try and ask ourselves, what are people talking about? So that's how we book the show. And, you know, that can take, honestly, it can take anywhere, you know, 2 hours, 3 hours, even more sometimes, right? And the job like never really ends. Like, although we walk out of there at 9 a.m., you know, people are calling us, hey, did you hear this happening? Okay, we're going to book that. So you're kind of working throughout the day, but we get really more serious about it at about 3. And we'll do that for maybe 3 hours or more. Like, it just depends on when we feel like we've got a nice schedule set for the next day. And then we do it all over. Yeah.
What does your evenings look like? What time do you go to bed? I only ask this because you wake up at 3:30.
I go to bed at 8:30.
Okay.
8:30, which
wow,
it's been an adjustment. Let me tell you.
You don't take a nap or anything?
I've still been experimenting a little bit.
Okay.
You could imagine like what a shock to my system it was when I started. You know, because you go from working a normal hour job to that, and I died for the first few weeks. And so I was kind of experimenting with naps, how long, you know, I was feeling like if I knocked out for an hour or two, I felt really crappy. But if I sleep for about 20 minutes, a half hour, I feel much better.
For sure.
So I've not been napping actually, unless for whatever reason, there are some days where I can barely drive, the 10-minute drive back home after the show because I'm so tired. Those are the days where it's like, I have to take a nap, but I'm still kind of experimenting with a schedule and getting a routine. And like I said, my partner and I just bought a house. So my routine has been so off. So I'm kind of looking forward to getting settled there. And then, because routine really is, I think, everything when you're waking up at 3:30, you know?
For sure.
And making sure, like, there's been times I've gone to bed at 9:30 and it just ruins me the next day, So being really diligent with the bedtime has been helpful.
Wow. When do you schedule, do you go to the gym? When do you exercise?
Yeah. So I actually go to a gym that is directly on my way home. I would have to drive around it. Okay. Yes. So, and that was purposeful. So I'll bring workout clothes to work and then immediately on my way home. And I'm tired, obviously, but at least it's
it works. It wakes you up.
It wakes you up. And like I said, I'd have to go out of my way to avoid it. And then it's done for the day and you can go home and go about your business. So that's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah. My workout is usually at, instead of finishing the workday at 5, I finish at 4 and then go to the gym.
See, I find that hard. I find the 5 o'clock hour, 4 or 5, so hard for motivation.
Yeah.
I really do.
It's, what, that time of day is I'm the most tired and that's the time where you want to take a nap.
Yeah.
So you go to the gym 10 minutes into the workout, you don't need a nap anymore.
Yep. No, you're good. You're good.
Good to
That's
go,
true.
right?
That's true. You get home, make dinner.
And then you're set all night. You have so much energy because you just worked out and then you ate dinner. So I'm set all night. I don't get tired at all after.
I will say, to be honest, I'm still getting used to the 3:30 a.m. I really am. But I don't know if I could go back to a normal 9 to 5. I honestly, because I get kind of the days off, not really off, but because they're flexible up until about 3, that is nice. You know what I mean? You are finished work. Well, you're leaving work at the same time that people are starting at. And so running errands and doing those kinds of things. I got lots of girlfriends off on mat leave right now and being able to meet them for a coffee, that's really nice. The one thing I will say is the hardest part, it's actually not waking up at 3:30 in the morning. Once you're up, you're up.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a morning person. I have lots of energy in the morning. My issue is maintaining the energy levels through the day.
Gotcha.
That's where I find the hardest. And the other thing is, sometimes I'm tired of going to bed at 8:30. It's oh my God, it's 8. It's not even late. I want to stay up. I want to watch a little something. But staying up that extra half hour,
it's gonna kill you.
It's gonna kill you the next day. That it's it's even on a night or a Thursday night, and it's just my boyfriend, he's just watching a fun movie or something, and it's oh God. Gotta go to bed. It's 8:30. That almost gets old. I feel kind of like a child sometimes. Ugh, take my butt to bed, mom says, you know?
Yeah, that is kind of aggravating, especially with your partner is kind of just it's 8:30. That's usually when I kind of
you're winding down. Yes.
And he's okay, good night. I'm going to go watch TV for an hour and a half
100%.
alone.
And even we're still eating dinner kind of late because I don't finish booking the show until maybe 6. So I'm eating dinner. I'm getting ready for bed in the span of 2 hours, and it's I sometimes feel there isn't that unwind time, but the unwind time is in the middle of the day, which is really kind of strange.
Yeah.
I'm working with it.
Yeah, that's okay. A lot of people think that 9 to 5 is so average, but a lot of people do work weird times in different schedules. Most people don't wake up at 3:30 in the morning, but
Well, this shocked me. So when I started at AM 800, here's the thing too. I've seen the ratings for years, obviously, and I knew that they were the number one radio in our local market. I knew that they did really well, but it wasn't until I got this job that I was oh my gosh, there is such loyal listeners. Until you're in it, it's whoa, I cannot believe the engagement on this program. And part of the reason I said that is I thought to myself, at 5 a.m., who could be listening at 5 a.m.? And when Mike and I start that show at 5 a.m., the text board is lighting up, calls are coming in, and it's crazy. It's oh, wow. there's a whole group of people that are up at 5 a.m. listening to us. And that's wild to me.
Do you guys run your own boards and everything?
No, we have producer Ed. Ed is our producer, and great guy. He is very talented, loves what he does, you can tell. And so he runs the boards, and he's really funny too. It's a funny guy. So he's got all the drops for us. He's very creative with that. And he adds this like little spicy element to the show that it would not be without him, doing what he does.
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's I like hearing like the logistics of how things work and
and he's picking music. I mean, we suggest things, and it really is a team effort, obviously. But Ed's picking a lot of the music, and he's funny. He plays a song going into somebody's interview that kind of ties in, and it's like, how'd you come up with this song? And yeah, he's very creative.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the three of you are working together for most of the show.
Oh,
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So today, so today you went to work and then you had to come here. So what'd you do in that? Did you like take time off, or were you kind of like doing work stuff betwin the time you finished and you came here?
Well,
no?
I'm in the process of moving. So every day is
moving.
dedicated to, and to be honest, I don't know if I've probably been more tired, but I am exhausted. We got the house last Monday, so we've been in for a little while.
You're
now.
living there already, or no?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
That's cool.
But just moving all the crap around, like all the furniture, and like, did I own this much stuff? Moving all that around, and we've painted. So I have dedicated the days to doing that, and it's coming to an end. Thank gosh, because I'm a little bit tired. But yeah, normally what I would do is I'd go work out, make some lunch, go home, and sometimes just kind of like chill a little bit before it kind of starts back up again, because I don't have that downtime in the evening. Yeah.
So are you about to, like, when you finish here, you're going to go work on the show?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I think that's probably a good point to end it on.
Okay,
then.
great.
It's like exactly an hour.
Oh, perfect.
So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm like, I hope I gave you what you wanted.
No, it was great. Thank you. So yeah, you guys are obviously on AM 800 every day from 5 to 9.
Check us out. Yeah, and I will say for younger people out there, watch our YouTube channel. It's easy. All you got to do is AM 800 CKLW on the YouTube, and the whole thing is like streamed live. You can go back and listen to it. For me, that's like one of the easiest ways to watch it, because a lot of younger people we don't have that. We don't do the traditional radio thing, right?
Yeah.
So the YouTube channel, I love watching it like that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Yeah, thanks again. That was super fun.
Oh, I hope that was okay.
It was great.
Okay. Oh my God. Like I said, I can talk a leg off a stool. So it's like, how much do you need?
No, it was great. That was perfect.